I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the friends who had the grace to see me through my journey without disqualifying me as less qualified to do what I do because I'm imperfect. Like, you have to have those people that you can be completely authentic with, that you can, like you said, show your ugly to, that you can just lay it all out. I'm struggling with this. It doesn't have to be a whole, squad, just 2 or 3 or 4 people that that you can turn to, because there is a healing. I think it's a spiritual principle, and I think it's a mental health principle, that there is a healing that takes place with confession.
Brought to you by Higher Vision Church. Here at the table, we believe there's more that unites us than divides us. My name's Sean Lochi. I'm the creative pastor here at Higher Vision. With us, we have Anthony Doris, who's our group's pastor, and we are with the wonderful, incredible Brittney Moses today, talking about mental health and anxiety. I know this is a very touchy subject and very sensitive, and for some of you listening, there was even an incident in the last couple of weeks with Pastor Andrew at Inland Hills Church, and for those of you who know or do not know, he's a pastor who ended up taking his life. And so, first of all, we just want to send our deepest condolences to the church, to Kayla, to the family. We're praying and thinking about you every day. And we even had a conversation. We actually had scheduled this conversation before that incident took place, and we were talking about, is it appropriate to have it? Is it appropriate to discuss this? And just feel that now more than ever that conversation needs to happen within the church. And so that's the point of this podcast, is to go into places that are tough to talk about, that are difficult, but we know there's a necessary conversation. So if you got about an hour, stick with us. We're glad that you're here, and welcome to the table.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brittney.
Yes.
We're so glad that you're here with us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. So give us a little bit. So you're studying right now clinical psychology, and you are primarily focusing on how that intersects with mental health, with faith.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is, I really do believe, a calling that chose me.
Yeah.
But I've been involved in ministry a lot in my life. I was a church kid. I was raised in the church, kind of fell away as a teenager, came back, and was back involved in ministry and church plants. And one side of my experience was that I was running into a lot of mental health issues in the church. I remember being a part of a church plant, and one of the youth, the young boys, was having suicidal thinking and ruminations. And, the pastor kind of telling me, hey, why don't you go, talk to the kid and his parents and pray for him. And I remember in that moment thinking, oh gosh, I don't really know what to say, what to do, even though when I was a teenager, I struggled with suicidal ruminations myself. I went to the automatic kind of church, we'll pray for them, which I don't underestimate the power of prayer. But it was a light bulb moment for me where I realized that we don't have the tools to deal with these hard issues. And so that was one. And then also throughout my life, I had episodically struggled with anxiety and depression. Anxiety is something I'm still continuously managing and overcoming to this day. And I just felt it so heavy on my heart to be the resource that I needed during these times. I remember feeling like I wish I had something to help me in my recovery, something for others in the church like me who need recovery, but want it to be based in Jesus because he is our source, And so that's how I went on to create my app, and I started a blog about it, and it went viral, some of the things, and that showed me like, this is a huge need. This is a huge conversation that needs to happen. And also went back to school for clinical psychology, knowing this is exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
So,
And it's absolutely, I think, a conversation that we need to have in the church, because it's been, for a long time, and even still to this day, a little bit taboo, because I think of what you just said is we have an idea, which is true that God can heal anything. And he's a divine, he is peace, he is comfort. And sometimes I think we can, although that is true, we can forget that we have to process things and he's given us a brain, he's given us an approach to learn these things and figure out how can we find balance in our life and be good, honestly, stewards of our emotional state. And so I think those two sometimes can be combative against each other if we don't find that balance and find that line. So I think it's great how, even I was just reading on your blog how you're saying you want to find the balance, you want to find the intersection of those two because it is there. And so, and you have a son as well?
Yeah, I have an 8-year-old son. He's almost going to be taller than me. Wow. I think that's so crazy. But yeah, I have an 8-year-old son, and I am a single mom. It's me and him, and it's wonderful. And we've been on this journey, this crazy journey together. And I love seeing how God is growing us together and individually and what he's doing with our lives. Yeah.
Now, is he into Fortnite or anything?
He's a Minecraft kid.
Oh, wow.
It's insane. It's insane. We went to a Minecraft convention.
Oh, there's a Minecraft convention?
Yes, and it's touring. Whoa. And there was one at the Staples Center. And when I got there, it was like a mini rave for Minecraft kids. It was insane. I was like, this is a thing. But I do know Fortnite's a thing. He hasn't gotten into that yet.
Yeah. So my nephew, he's 11 or 12. I think he's 12 now. And I was just with him this last week. And there's like dances.
I've heard of that.
It's a whole culture, bro.
Dude, I'm so
it's a whole culture. So like they have these dances that everybody does, like the scissor dance, all these. I don't know
floss?
The floss.
Oh, yeah. I know the floss. I can do the floss.
You can do the floss?
Yeah,
I cannot do the floss. Like it's so weird. And my son just started doing this. I have a 12-year-old son. Just turned 12. He is crazy. He was crazy about Minecraft. Yeah. Now he's crazy about Fortnite. And so it was really crazy. And he just started doing this dance, and he was teaching his sister. I was like, what is that? He's like, it's Fortnite, Dad. This is a whole culture now. Like, I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Mind blowing.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I don't know about your son, but my son doesn't watch TV like I used to. Wow. Like when I was a kid, you would watch cartoons and you had your favorite cartoons. It's like, no, he has his favorite games and YouTubers.
Yes.
With
YouTube
games. It's a whole different, it's a whole different thing.
Yes. They have their crazy YouTube. Your kids aren't at this point yet, but they want to watch YouTubers all day long.
All day.
So Daily Bumps is my son and my daughter. They love them. And they have millions of followers.
Wow.
And so
it's true.
Yeah.
It's a new world.
Yeah. That's a whole new world. I think even for us growing up, I mean, we had digital technology, but it wasn't, so I have some sister-in-laws who are, getting into 18, 17, and they are in, their life was built in technology. The idea, I remember for me, MySpace came around, Tom, he was my friend.
Yeah, he was everybody's first friend.
He's the very first friend. That's so funny. And so... but I remember basically actively choosing to be in that. And now you have children. Now even, my children as well. I'm posting a photo of them. They're in this digital space before they even, and that I just wonder a lot, how does that impact our anxiety? How does that impact, where does social media find that line into it? And I think, I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything you've read up on that or.
Yeah. I mean, social media is one of those things, like most things, where it is a tool and it depends on the user as far as which way your mental health goes. But I definitely do believe that the way social media and the internet was introduced to us escalated and took off faster than we gained the skills to healthily cope with and adapt to being in that world. So it's almost like we are now mentally trying to catch up with this big world that took off, like I said, faster than we kind of really thought about and processed and put the skills in place of what to do with this new world. Yeah. So, it depends on the user, but obviously it can have a great impact on your mental health if you're comparing yourself to other people's lives, if you're not keeping in mind that most of the time what people show you is what they want you to see. Right. And I do that. You know what I mean? Because not everything is meant for everybody. Not everybody, when I'm processing things or going through maybe issues with anxiety or have gone through an issue with depression. I personally haven't posted it. I think that would ring true for a lot of us. But we just have to keep that in mind, because otherwise we're going to be looking at other people's profiles and be like, oh, they have more friends than I do. They get out more than I do. They're doing better than I do, and start feeling like God has left you behind, or he's forgotten about you.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm thinking, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about Chris Rock said this in one of his stand-up specials. He said when he was talking about dating, he said when you're dating a person and you first see that person, you're meeting their representative. You're not really meeting who the real person is, right? Yeah. They're putting out their best foot forward, you know what I mean, until you get to know them about a year later, and then they show their true colors. But the thing that social media has done, you never get to see these people's true colors if they can just stay behind a keyboard. You know what I mean? And so how does that affect someone? Because, when we socialized back in the day, going to school, you can put that first foot forward, but then sooner or later your true colors are going to show, because you have to actually be in front of the person. But what about, you're able to hide behind a keyboard? How does that affect these kids and not getting them out into being, social in the real world?
Especially if you're a teenager. Especially if you're a teenager, because that's such a stage where you're trying to figure out your own identity and worth. I know it was for me. And so now you have this added component of the internet that you have to battle with. So now you have this double battle. And I mean, I can only imagine, like when I was a teenager, we didn't have Instagram and Facebook. All we had was MySpace. And all you had to worry about was who was on your top 10. You know?
And that was stressful.
That was stressful.
Like, oh no, you're getting bumped this week.
Top 10. I forgot about the top 10. Wow. Interesting.
So it's tough, and we have to have conversations with our kids about it.
I don't know if do you guys watch the show Black Mirror?
I did.
Have you seen the social media?
Yes, with the stars.
And if you haven't seen that show and you're listening, I mean, there's some weird Black Mirror shows, but there's one on social media that when I watched it, it was just kind of like, I know that this is supposed to be in a depiction of the future of what how we could end up, but that one to me is like, that's not ending up. That's real. Like,
it's real. Yeah.
I see.
That's Yelp.
I mean, like you live and die.
Affects your business. It's crazy.
But even more so than Yelp, it's almost like your social profile is your Yelp. Yeah. And so interactions now, and I never had this growing up, but I think even more so now than ever is people. Hey, I want to be your friend. Mm-hmm. Well, let me look at you. You only got 100 followers. Well, this person has 1,000. Yeah. So this person has 10,000. I need to be a part of that. And that culture, I think that I was trying to think of the right term, and but I think that we've basically, honestly, in so many ways, we've prostituted our connection in the fact that like we've given up what it was meant to be, real, authentic relationship. Yeah. What connection was meant to be of this beautiful thing where it's life-giving, you feel a sense of belonging, and we've just let that go for now. We just want that quick dopamine. Mm-hmm. We just want that quick, give me a like and good, and I'm on. But we're actually not getting the thing that we were meant as humans to have. Yeah. And so I don't know, social media, it's at this weird crossroads where it's like, I think in the beginning there was some health to it, but now it's just the whole balance thing of it's gone so far the other end to where everyone has, and it's a good way to communicate. And if you leave it, like what you say, you leave it at that tool, then it's good. Yeah. But when you start to let that be your main source of connection with humanity, you're going to eventually find that you don't actually have that connection with humanity because it's not good for that, and you can't have the look a person in the eyes and some of that stuff, And so I think we have a generation that's growing up that if that's not balanced, that's what's in my opinion, leading to such a big rise in anxiety. And, we mentioned Pastor Andrew in the beginning of this whole thing, but even more so, we're now seeing it in church. And I'm not saying this is this scenario by any means, but I'm just saying within the church culture, now there's a rise of churches looking at other churches and people, leaders in a church and pastors. How many followers do I have as a Christian, and it's just nothing that God desired or meant for us to have. Yeah.
I agree. Like, I like what you said, and you mentioned it too, just this facade of having a relationship when you don't. Like, social media gives off this impression that you are connected to people when you're really not. It's like when you see, the families of your friends or a person posting just updates with your life, you feel like you know what's going on with this person. But in reality, that person could be struggling with depression deeply. That person could be about to take their life. That person could be struggling with anxiety. And so, we do have just mental health, general foundational needs of love, support, and belonging. That is a real need that we have. And we have this facade that we're meeting it through social media, but we're not. And even like, chemically, if we were to go to like the neurological level, when you meet with a person in person and you're looking them in the eyes and you're having, hugging them, touching them, whatever, it releases like oxytocin in the brain, and that's a real connection. And so it's, it's kind of, it's like, it's a fake kind of. And so we have to realize that. Yeah. We have to, and then I think we're lazy. I think it's easier to scroll down your timeline and see how people are doing and like send a message rather than to get up. Look, some days I don't want to put on jeans pants. Like we all have those days, but you got it. Then you have to get up and you have to get dressed and you have to drive somewhere and meet someone and sit with them. And we just have the kind of the luxury of not doing that by just checking online. But we need it. We need it. It would be healthy for us to even create an intentional habit of saying, I'm going to meet with 3 friends this month. I'm going to sit down and make that an actual thing, because it does help your mental health. And a lot of research has shown that people that have meaningful conversations, they did studies, people who have sit down and have meaningful conversations are happier and more fulfilled than people who kind of have these surface level, talks and don't really connect with anyone.
That's so interesting because when we started talking, this podcast was kind of born out of us having a 2-hour conversation with each other about politics, about race, about all these things that's going on in the world. And we just had this crazy conversation, and it felt so good at the end to talk to each other and say, man, we disagree about a bunch, but we agree on a lot too. And we agree on, one thing, the biggest thing is that Jesus is the answer, and the church can be the answer for the divide we have in the world. And it was just so great walking away from that conversation. And I'm thinking, as you're talking, walking away from different gatherings I've been to, my wife and I, we would just say, that was really great. Yeah. To see all of them. That was really great to hug them and to find out how they're really doing. You know what I mean? So I can attest that it feels so much better than just kind of scrolling them up timeline.
And it takes energy. I mean, like even one of the things that we're right now, even at Higher Vision Church, but just the church in general is I think that we are all trying to figure out how do we make sure community stays at the center of it all. And I love that we're doing more and more groups and circles, and that is the culture here. But even that takes energy. It takes, I'm going to have to block off time. I'm going to have, and in a busy, life is busy. I feel like California life is busier. Yeah. I feel like LA, California life is like
high-paced.
Yeah, it's fast. I mean, it's funny. I was even just up in NorCal this last week just on vacation, and it was just like everyone's chill. And California is not chill. Like but I think in LA, you have to be, you're going to have, if you want to make community as a priority, you have to, number one, put aside, like, there's the beach, there's Disneyland, there's every museum you've ever wanted, the best food. And then if that's all done, go camping, go hiking, like everything's awesome, right? So you have to say, we're going to bring people along intentionally with that, or I'm going to put that aside for a moment. And then couple in, you got a commute that's 50, that's 4 hours long, like whatever it is.
Right.
You have all these obstacles, and at the end of the day, when you get home, you are tired. And so it is easier just to go, scroll through. But it's all that reason why you have to keep it in a place of priority, because if you don't, you'll find you'll go months with that and then end up just in a place where you feel alone, you feel isolated, and that's when all of the mental health stuff starts to creep in my opinion. And you see anxiety rise, and you see depression. And so it's interesting because the church is like the solution for this, where you have community, you have people finding Christ, you have authentic community, not forced, not fake, but real people caring for each other, regardless of race, gender, where you come up, where you've been grown, your entire background. People are coming together and, celebrating a unified Savior. And so in some ways it is the answer, in most ways, but I do feel like and maybe you could share a little bit of your experience, but there are some stories in church where people are afraid to go because it has caused anxiety for them and it has caused mental health issues. And so a natural response, honestly, when you have that, is to push away and say, I want nothing to do with that. And so the very thing that is the answer has hurt people. And so it's pushed away.
Yeah.
And, I think community is in the center of that. But, yeah.
By the way, do you guys know if you go on your iPhone and you go to the settings and you go to your battery, it will show you how many hours you've spent for the day or even for the week on certain apps.
That's awesome.
I found out that Instagram was my part-time job.
Wow.
No, literally. I think I spent like 15 to 20 hours total. Did you too? I was like, that was a light bulb moment for me. So I was like, whoa.
So I guess I'm just gonna be transparent here. So my friend Matt, he's into gadgets, and so he told my wife and I, he said, I found this app that will show you every moment you spend on your phone, and so it's called Moments.
So
and
convicting.
Here's my moments. I'm showing it.
Oh man.
And so my moments are like, I spend so much time on my phone. It's like 9, 6, 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's everything you do on your phone, whether it's, reading my emails or checking the groups online, whatever it is, work, but I'm on my phone too much. And I even told my son, like, tell dad, like, hey dad, get off your phone. You know what I mean? Like, make sure I'm paying attention to you.
Your phone's ringing right now.
Yeah, I know.
As we're talking.
It's crazy, but it goes back to the facade thing. You know what I mean? Like we live in LA, so there's so many communities. I feel like we're inundated with a lot of communities. You know what I mean? There's so many communities that you can be a part of. Like my kids, they act. And so there's a community that you can be a part of, like, people who know about going to auditions and knowing how to book commercials and all those kind of things. But those things are like really fake. You know what I mean? We know each other kind of like on the surface, but they're not real. You know what I mean? And so I find myself trying to dig through all of the communities to trying to find the real community that can really, Pastor Randy says this, that I can show my ugly to. Like I can tell you things that I'm going through and you won't judge me, but you'll help me, you'll walk with me. Those are the kind of communities that are important to me. And I'm trying to, wade through all those facades to get to those real communities.
I think that with church, going back to what you were saying about feeling maybe pushed away or judged by certain communities, that's tough because I had experienced that at some point in my walk as a Christian, as a Jesus-loving, like on fire for God Christian, encountered a church where, there was, just kind of toxic things like gossip and judgment and things. And for a brief period, it made me like want to take a break from church, so I can only imagine someone who maybe isn't full-fledged into their walk with Christ or is just now discovering him and then experiences that and being so easily turned away. So, I love the analogy that it's not us pointing Jesus to the cross, pointing people to the cross, but it's us saying, let's walk together to the cross where we're all broken. We all have our issues and we're walking to Jesus together. And I think that if we can adapt that, more of that attitude, more of that culture, because it is biblical, then we'll be humble, enough to not make everything a faith issue, an assassination of character in the church. We're just too quick to do that. And even to ourselves though, where when something's wrong with us, if we're struggling with anxiety or whatever, it's us having a faith issue. It's us not being Christian enough. I think we need a clean slate with how we're talking about that and how we're thinking about that.
Yeah. I think, community is messy. Like you just got to put out like your
community,
your deepest sense of community, even family it's you make a commitment and it's messy and it's brutal at times, but you say, I'm going to stick it out and be with him. And I think that it's always that balance of if you're going to enter into community, you're probably going to be hurt. There are going to be things that come up, but it doesn't mean that you're not loved. And I think where we need to really look is as leaders and pastors, and myself in this pot, like, we need to be okay with community being messy. We need to be okay that we can't control it. Like, if the moment that starts to become a thing, we are interjecting ourselves into something that God is the only person that can do that. And we are actually, we could be messing up what the Holy Spirit wants to do. And so, just like what you said, is I think the more that as leaders and pastors we can get out of the way, and rather than, and I say this with all love and respect, but sometimes almost get in between the cross and people, to where it's like, we're here to give you to be the Jesus. We step out of the way and say, we're a coach. We're here to point you to the cross and cheer you along your path to find that. Yeah. And here to answer anything you need and be there for you when you fall, cheer you when you rise, but never push you away. And I think, unfortunately, there has been some things within the church where when somebody doesn't operate in a way that the leader or pastor sees, they kind of push away and outcast them, which, like what you're saying, almost demonize what that person has gone through. Yeah. Quiet, subdue, all that stuff, which for dealing with mental health is the worst things. Like, I mean, I don't have a study I can quote on this, but basically the article was saying how if you've gone through a traumatic experience, just verbalizing it makes your brain connect and move past it. But often in a church, if the traumatic experience, it's like, let's just push that to the side. And so then a person's told to be quiet, to not deal with it. I've even seen sometimes a person in a healthy way wanting to just talk about what they've gone through in a traumatic way, being told it's gossip, it's slander, but they've actually gone through a very traumatic experience. And so that's where there's that juxtaposition of the church is the answer, but really as leaders and pastors, and I think the larger congregation that you have, or the more amount of people you're leading, you need to be more acutely aware to the responsibility you have, and more in tune with your being very careful with the people that you're caring for, Yeah. And so there's that weird juxtaposition of the very thing that can help and that is the answer, also because of poor leadership or just inexperience or any of that stuff, can also hurt you very deeply,
I was going to say that, it's definitely a taboo subject, but just in the undertones of history of church culture, you think about just back in times of like what Alexander, where you had these doctor priests, where whenever there was a mental illness, there were rituals to cast out the demon, and that's kind of just a thing with time when we don't know and don't have a full understanding of things. We did what we could back in the day, but the church was the place for healing, but many times that was, exorcisms and whatnot. But even with, you think about the Hebrews, and a lot of times they equated illnesses to God's sin punishment, or, coming from God's wrath. I think it's John 9, where Jesus sees the blind man, and I think it's Peter, one of the disciples, asked, what sin did this man or his parents commit for him to be blind? Yeah. And Jesus is like, neither him nor his parents committed a sin. This happened so that God may be glorified. And then he heals him, and then God gets the glory from it. And so there has been this historical church culture kind of undertone that when there's an illness, or when there's, I don't know, something like depression or whatever, it's a result of sin. It's a result of God's wrath. It's a result of somebody doing something wrong, or something being wrong with someone's faith. And so because we take this 100% spiritual view, where everything's a spiritual matter. And things, don't get me wrong, I do believe mental health and mental illness is so intertwined with spirit, with, your faith, for sure. But my whole, I guess, goal and the things that I do and the things that I write and present is that we as a church take on a holistic perspective, because we have mental health, we have social health, we have physical health, and obviously we have spiritual health, and it's all intertwined together. And so, we just have to be more, we have to be more integrated, because there are different reasons people have mental health issues. One could be they have different biochemical levels, just things such as if you're low in serotonin in your brain, that could cause you to have more anxiety or more depression. Or if you have an underactive thyroid that's not producing enough hormones, that can lead to depression and a lack of motivation. So there are physical reasons for these issues, and there are psychological reasons, like what you were saying, where it's like people try to bring up these topics and it's just like, leave it alone. For some reason, and I've seen it so much, and I've even thought this way as a Christian, I've come to Christ, I've been born again, I'm made new, the past is the past, I'm a new creation, therefore that's not a part of me anymore. Which spiritually and in sanctification, he is renewing us. But the truth is, we still have a human experience. We still have these traumas. And even though we are saved and we come to Christ, we still have to deal with these things that are part of the human experience. And so we need to be realistic about it, because the longer that people go without dealing with these issues, the longer it is going to be for them to make a recovery from it. And we don't want, if we're a healing place, if we're a place of healing people, then we need to take that into consideration and look at the whole person, and that's kind of, we just really need I feel, if anything, with the whole mental health issue, is a shift of perspective. We just need a better perspective of all of this.
Yeah, that's so good. I think, dealing with people, I've been dealing with people a long time, being a pastor and pastoring people. And sometimes, going back to what you said, Sean, sometimes we throw people away. Yeah. You know what I mean? If they have an issue, we throw them away if we don't know how to deal with it. So one, I want to ask, how do we take that stigma out of mental health, like in the church, like not making it something that's so taboo that we don't deal with? How do we approach that and say, no, this is something that God can deal with. This is something that we can be equipped to deal with. Yeah. And then how do we put tools into pastors' hands who are like looking at something and saying, yeah, this is not a spiritual thing. This is something that's dealing with the human experience. How do we get people in here to minister to that issue as well? Because this is a healing place. And so what are the steps to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a church, we just need to integrate the mental health conversation more into our ministry programs, because there are people in the church who have a diagnosis. There are people in the church who honestly need a diagnosis because they're going through things and they feel like they're crazy and they don't know why, and they're questioning God and they're questioning their faith. But when they go see a professional and they get that diagnosis, even though for a lot of people it's scary, because I deal with mental health support groups, people with mental illness, a lot of people find it freeing actually when they go to that professional and they find out what it is they're struggling with, because the more you understand something, the more it breaks down the fear around it. And so then they can actually start getting the help they need in maintaining that, or if they need medication, like I said, to help with that thyroid issue or those chemical imbalances. So one is that we need to be talking about it more, whether it's even having a sermon series on it, and you have different people. Maybe you have a mini conference about it at the church where you have people come and talk about it. Maybe you have, this is big, support groups for people who have mental illness, or for family members and friends of people who are dealing with it, because it's very hard, and something like that doesn't necessarily have to be educational, because I'm a facilitator for NAMI's support groups, and it's more so just about getting people to talk about what they're experiencing, to feel less alone in it. And also a lot of times they have a lot of resources that they've used that they can give each other. So support groups, having sermons about it, integrated into ministry plans, even having the leaders or people who are dealing on the front lines with those in your church go through something like mental health first aid. Like I was certified in that. It was a one-day thing where you get all the mental health basics on what are the signs to look for depression, anxiety, suicidal thinking, psychotic episodes, and how to what's the word I'm thinking of? How to de-escalate those situations and then help point them into the direction that they need. So it's, I think, just about educating ourselves, as leaders, as those in the church, and just opening the door for those opportunities, because there are people, without a doubt, who are struggling with it, who are coming to church every Sunday, going home, and still feeling, hurt and helpless and lost. And if they hear from their church, like, this is something we're opening and talking to, like, that's so huge. And even for pastors, they found that, I think it was something like 23%, 1 in 4 pastors have struggled with or have been diagnosed with struggling with that. So it's real. It's so real, it's so tangible, it baffles me that we're not talking about it. When it's in our face, we're on the front lines as a church. Research for over 20 years has shown that people will go to their spiritual leader and to their pastor before they will go to a mental health professional. So the church needs to know that we are on the front lines of this, because they will come to us, and they're coming here because they're hurt, because they're broken, because they're trying to figure themselves out.
Yeah. And I think it always comes back to balance, because I think that, any other medical diagnosis, if somebody came in and said, I have cancer, like, we would say, well, I'm going to pray for you, but you need to see a doctor. Like, both of these things are good.
So true.
It's not an either or thing. So although I believe God can heal you, and, he's divine and sovereign, and we submit to that sovereignty, and I have the faith that God can do anything because he's God. In the same token, we have humans that God's given brains to, and they have spent their life to create a cure for this, and there may be a solve. And I think if we go into either of those courts without the other, we miss that intersectionality. And I think for some reason, with mental health, we haven't quite gotten there to the, well, you have mental health, just pray through it. Well, God died for you. What are you sad about? Some of those, we kind of we kind of just say these catchphrases that, like, well, here you go. Here's my answer. Here's your solve. Get over it. And that clearly isn't working. So it needs to be, we pray for you. Let me tell you about the goodness of God. In the same token, if this is something that is bigger than what I can do, we need to work out the actual help for you to get and move past this. But we got to remove the taboo, a stigma of the red, the scarlet letter on you, that this is, you're now this kind of person. But to that point of even pastors and leaders, 23%, you said it was about 23%?
About 23%.
That's shocking. And
it was, I think, Lifeway in partner with Focus of the Family did a study where they surveyed a lot of people, but one in particular, over 1,000, I think, Protestant pastors and priests and leaders, and that's where they found 23%.
I think that we've taken on a burden that we were never meant to have. So there's been, like, when Jesus left, he said, "Go and make disciples of all nations." So this is a tangible, I don't want to say easy, but it's something that I can say I can do. But we've kind of taken on the mindset of it's my responsibility to change the world.
Yeah.
And Jesus never said that. And so we've put this burden and it starts in a good place. Like it starts in a healthy, like, I want to see people know Christ, which is great.
Yeah.
But if not taken care of and watched, it can lead to pastors who are putting, the ministry of church ahead of their ministry of family, and are forsaking all the things God has given them to be a good steward of that produce a healthy life for the sake of growing this local church. And the cost of that is like anxiety, depression, and ultimately, it leads to, unfortunately, suicide and just stuff that is unbelievable. That is the hardest thing to hear in a Christian faith. But I think that we as leaders need to recognize that God, he never told me to go change the world. He never said that. He said,
Savior syndrome.
Yeah, he said, go make disciples. He can save the world. Right. And I don't want that. Like, if you're looking to me to have that, the wrong dude. There's a guy named Jesus that did it pretty well. Right. And so we point to him and we take that burden off and we just make disciples. And that's when I think we stay in that healthy balance, we can find it. But we've taken on the burden that we're not meant to take on. And I think in some regards, we were talking about people who, we talk about church, like the big C church, meaning believers everywhere, and then little C church, which is organizations that are doing their best to model that. And I think one thing we have to recognize is that we as pastors and leaders create a culture that represents the Big C church, healthy or unhealthy. And it's on us. So like if we are modeling this life, we need to create spaces and not look to, if we find people are hurt and bitter and just angry at our church, we need to have a deep, like, intrinsic moment to go, why? Because if I'm here to be Jesus to these people, and Jesus could hang out with who that dude hung out with, like,
right,
would be the who's who of do not touch them. Like, and he's with these people, and he found a way to do that and to show love and grace. We all the more then need to create these spaces where people can talk, they can be open. We're not afraid of the conversation. What is there to be afraid of if we're pointing to Jesus? Like, and we're here for you, and we're creating an organization that models the Big C church as much as we can and models Jesus. But we as leaders, it starts with us.
Yes.
It starts like, how are we on the inside? Are we dealing with anxiety? Are we dealing with fear?
Yeah.
If it is, start there. Don't even get mad at like a congregation or go figure that out. And then as that conversation becomes more apparent and on the forefront, I think it naturally will work its way through people who struggle with it,
I think, for the little C church, for those little organizations that sometimes we have allowed leaders to be placed on these pedestals that they don't belong on, right? And when you place people on those pedestals, they don't become human anymore. They become the guy or the gal who is on the screen, on the stage, and they need to be perfect at all times. And I just want to say, destroy the pedestal. Kill the pedestal. And as a pastor, we have to bring ourselves down, make sure people understand, no, I'm just as human as you are. I need just as much as you need, And just as much as you need to be shepherded, I need to be shepherded as well. And I wanted to say that Jesus had an inner circle. He had a circle that he could get away from everybody. He had the 12, but then he had that inner circle, those three guys who they could see him actually cry, actually see him sweat blood, and not judge him and say, no, we get you. We can see you agonize. And I think pastors need that inner circle. And I'm not sure if the pastor that we were talking about at the beginning, I'm not sure if he had that inner circle. I just want to make sure that, man, as pastors, as leaders, like we seek that inner circle that can just, I call them my bubble poppers. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
That's great. I love it.
My inner circle is my wife. She'll pop that bubble. Hey, bro, you're getting too high. My mom, my dad. My brother. Those are people I can. And then people around here that just become real brothers and sisters in the Lord that I can show my ugly to, and they say, yeah, here's what you need to do. And not thinking about me as a pastor or somebody who's perfect or somebody who's preaches. Forget that. Forget the pedestal. I need help right now. And I think, that's the thing that a lot of pastors need to find. Find your inner circle. Find those people who you can talk to and say, man, I'm struggling right now. You know what I mean? And then sometimes take a break. Take a break. I saw a pastor. He said, man, I'm going on a break. I take a break every single year just to get away.
Have to.
You know what I mean? And so how important is that for pastors to find that inner circle and to take that break? How important is
I think that your sanity depends on it. Like literally, I'm not a pastor of a church, but my friend asked me the other day, she was just like, how do you stay centered and how do you stay grounded? You're dealing with all these people with mental health issues and mental illness and, this church image thing, and I tell her like, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have the friends who had the grace to see me through my journey without disqualifying me as less qualified to do what I do because I'm imperfect. Like you have to have those people that you can be completely authentic with, that you can, like you said, show your ugly to, that you can just lay it all out. I'm struggling with this. It doesn't have to be a whole, squad, just 2 or 3 or 4 people that that you can turn to, because like you mentioned this or something about a study about when you speak it, how it kind of sets you free. And I just think about the scripture. I think it's James 5:6, where he says, confess your sins to one another so that you may pray and be healed, and there is a healing. I think it's a spiritual principle, and I think it's a mental health principle, that there is a healing that takes place with confession, and that you need to, because when things are going on all up in your head, and I'm a professional overthinker. I have a PhD in overthinking. I think that I can solve everything in my head, like up here. Yeah. But the more that all those issues that you're struggling with and the burdens stay up here, I feel like it just manifests in the dark. But when you speak it or you write it down, you set it free and you make it tangible. And now you have something to deal with out here instead of just in here in your head. And so I can imagine with pastors, like much of us who are carrying so much, like I said, I've been a part of church plants and I've watched these pastors of these small churches or church plants where they are literally everything. Like they run to that couple's house at 11 o'clock at night to counsel them because their marriage is about to break down. And they're also trying to plan strategy and vision for the church. And they're also trying to raise their teenage children to be godly at such a hard and tough age. And they're also trying to deal with the church dynamics of just different people in the church and how volunteers are. I mean, they're dealing with everything. And for one, like first is like delegate, right? Like you try to delegate what you can. It's hard when you have your own vision. It's your baby and you kind of know and see how things need to be run, but you got to find a way to delegate and you've got to have that break, like you were talking about, that space, and you have to have people that you can be vulnerable with. Pastor Andrew, the one who passed away after taking his life, his wife has been writing about, I don't know if you guys have been following, but on her Instagram and also on her website, she's actually been like writing letters to him like each day, like as she's processing it. And in one of them, she was saying, when you were struggling with this, I wish I knew how serious it was. I wish that if I would have known that it would have come to this and I would have done more. And I think that's kind of a general feeling when it comes to grief with anyone passing away. But we need to pay attention to our leaders, especially those who are in leadership around their pastor. Check in with them and be like, hey, where are you? Where are you really? Like, what's going on? Because just having someone who sees you, who really sees you, is freeing.
Yeah. And it comes back to, we kind of talked on this in the beginning, but social media and all that of just, you have to have that inner circle. You have to, as a human. Yeah. It can be in your family, it can be in friends, it can be in a lot of different places for those who didn't have family growing up. And we have to recognize that if we don't have that, it is a matter of time. It's not, because I don't think it's one of those things that you can your whole life and be completely happy without that. I think that if you don't have that, it is a matter of time before something comes and grabs you and you feel, if this is, for lack of a better word, you feel that demon honestly come inside of you, and that could have been avoided with that close-knit circle of people that you can be completely transparent. You do not have to worry. And then in the same token, we need to be people, if we're in a great mental health place, to model that and be that transparent. Like, you can be completely who you are around me, and you're not going to be, because honestly, I have seen it even in the past where there's leaders or people who will say, you can be completely open. And then when somebody is open, it's like used and twisted, and it's ultimately, the bottom line is it's just bad leadership, and it's toxic leadership, and it can act, but I've seen it take people who maybe even are struggling and having questions and trying to figure out something in a mental health space, and now it's pinned against them. And that's just like for somebody who's already dealing with something, and then they don't want to talk about it ever again. And the idea of church and the idea of the thing that can help them, they're so upset with. And so I think we just have to, one, recognize that not all, and this is kind of a bottom line truth, not all leaders are meant to handle that, and not all leaders are in the capacity to do that.
That's true.
And so be careful, not necessarily be careful, but we have to just recognize that as people of who is our inner circle, can we trust them to that level, and ultimately know that it's my choice and it's my decision and it's my emotional state that I'm taking care of, and there's nobody that should feel that weight or feel that responsibility. So it's my decisions of who I'm sharing with, and I recognize if this is not helping or it's hurting, I'm okay to move away from that. But it doesn't mean I close that wall up and never open it again. It means I need to find the healthy place, and that could be a ton of different things, but
on the flip side, I have to say also, we have to stop turning people into projects, because absolutely. I have been on both sides of the fence where I went to someone and then I felt like a project. And when you feel like a project, it feels like, oh, healthy you and struggling me. Like you're in this place guiding me and I'm in this broken, weak place. And even though that's true, a person might be in a healthier place than you. Shouldn't feel like that, because it's just, it's undermining to your own recovery as well. It's undermining to your own ability to go through your recovery process. So I've seen it where it's just like, and just the language in the church, like, oh, kind of this, oh, poor this person in the church. Oh, poor this person is struggling with this. And they're like over here, the broken, struggling person. And we're the healthy, good Christians who have it together. And we're going to help this person. And it's like, that is such an unhealthy mindset. And it's unrealistic, because we all struggle with things. But the other person on the receiving end who needs help can feel that. They can feel that kind of, I'm the project, I'm the needing fixing. I mean, I remember going to a pastor and his wife once, and having struggled with something, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to meet monthly for this, and we're going to check in for this, and or I remember one time at church, I didn't go to the altar that time for prayer. I was just kind of sitting, taking in, and it was, why didn't you go to the altar for prayer? We know you're struggling with this. Let my recovery be my own. Let God work with me. And that's one of the things they teach you, kind of therapy 101. Whenever it comes to a therapeutic and client relationship, the client, you need to give the client the opportunity to have permission to say, hey, so I'm thinking that maybe this might help. Do you agree to this plan? Is this something that you would want to do? And, again, walking with them, not healthy, righteous me and struggling poor you. Like, we really need to get rid of that attitude as a church, because it is damaging and it does make a person not want to not come out. And we were talking about suicidal thoughts. One of the first of all, suicide is preventable. It's preventable. Yeah. The signs are there, and the person is giving off signs, but we're either not tuned in, or we're not taking it seriously, or they're going through it alone, very alone. And so talking about it, being open about it, that's going to be a big solution for us. But in order to do that, we have to walk with people, not like I said, we have to get rid of that attitude of that will turn people off from feeling like opening up.
Yeah. I think it just goes back to that idea that we have to be the coach on the sideline. Yeah. And, I try to model that. I love Pastor Jared models that so well.
Yeah.
Like just being the coach, like take me off the pedestal, because I am encouraged to see, and there's so many pastors that model that so well.
Yeah.
There's the plethora of out there, but it's we just have to be mindful of that as leaders. And I say pastors, but if I'm saying pastors, I'm meaning anyone who feels a desire to help people find Jesus. So whether that's a leader or whatever world that's in, even in your work environment, if you are carrying the call of Christ to help people find disciples, or help people become disciples of Jesus, we have to recognize we play a role in some regards as some sort of pastor, mentor, leader, whatever that title is. And we need to be acutely aware to these things, that we make an impact in people's lives, and we are representing our God. So the way we represent him is how people are going to perceive him.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Yeah, I think the more we can just come along the journey and remove those letters, the scarlet letter on the person is vitally important, because at the end of the day, we are all sinners and we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And the way one person sins is different than the way I sin, but unless I'm perfect, which there was one man that was, there's one. That's the beauty of the gospel.
Yeah.
Just one.
Unless I'm perfect, I'm only here to cheer you on and help give you advice and point you to that one person over and over and over again.
There's a quote that I love. It's by Brittney Brown. And she says, it's as if we've divided the world into those who help and those who need help. But the truth is that we're all both. And
that's
so
great.
I try to live by that.
Yeah.
Because we do that in the church. We do that. We divide between the people who help, the people that need help, the people on the stage, the people in the congregation, the people in leadership, the people in the body. Like, we're all one, and we're all both at any given time, at any given circumstance. And when we realize that, I think it'll make us a little bit more humble and open and less judgmental to helping one another.
I think it makes us more fruitful.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? When I started stepping into being pastor, people would come and say, "Hey, I want to be mentored by you," and things like that. And I used to get so nervous, about like, what am I going to teach these people? You know what I mean? Like, do I have to have a mentorship program? And what I really found out, what it's really about is just walking with people and letting them know, hey, I'm just as broken as you are. You know what I mean? As much, and I learned this from Pastor Jared. He said, as much as you want to learn from me, you're probably going to learn some things you don't want to do too. You know what I mean? And it was so refreshing to hear him say that, like, he didn't have all the answers, and I don't have to have all the answers. You know what I mean? And I told one friend, I said, hey, how I do mentorship is we're going to have a friendship. You know what I mean? I'm gonna pour into you, and you're gonna pour into me just as much as I pour into you, and it's gonna be a give and take thing. You know what I mean? I think if we approach ministry like that, about hey, I'm not giving you a hand up, and I'm not up here. Hey, we're walking together. I think that's so awesome. It's so cool that we can do it that way. So I grew up in a very traditional Pentecostal church, so everything was about the Spirit, and everything was about using the gifts of the Spirit and casting out demons, things like that happened. And people would come to the church, and they may or may not have had a demon manifesting in them, and sometimes it was cast out, but other times you could clearly see, like, we've prayed over this person, cast something. This person is still acting up. It's not that. They may have a real mental issue, right? But we didn't know how to deal with it, so we just called everything a demon. And it's like, no, everything is not a demon. Sometimes people really have mental issues, like you were saying. And how do we deal with that? But again, sometimes when we don't know how to deal with it, we just throw it away, or we just say, well, just pray about it. And, man, faith without works is dead. We have to have some work behind what we're praying about, what we're believing for. You know what I mean? And I'm just, I wanted to talk about that because there's so many people who are still in that situation where everything's a demon. No, everything is not a demon. How do we come and help people deal with true mental illness?
It's that undertone culture history. Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Well, we fear what we don't know. Yes. And so when we don't know something, rather than it's easy to just go boom. Like, even to the simplest form. And I've seen that where it's like there's a sound issue or whatever. It's like the demon in the speakers. Like it's like, no, the cord is just broken. That's all. And that's what's causing this buzz. And we can fix it real quick. But, for sure. If you don't know that, I don't know. So, but I know that's kind of a funny thing. But like we take that too. We don't know it. We don't understand it, and it's a lot of energy, and it's conversation, and it's work. It is the work to figure this out. And ultimately, we may spend a lifetime trying to figure this out and get nowhere, I should say, progress the conversation, but not figure out the cure, end all, be all. So, I think that there is definitely. It comes from a good place that God can heal.
Absolutely.
God is the answer. He is, Jesus can do all these things. But when we leave that when realizing, okay, there is an actual thing that needs to be addressed here, it's just the balance thing. I think I find a lot God, more and more I find him in the balance than in the extremes as I get older and older. And I think this is definitely one of those, in my opinion.
And I wanted to say, talking about God's healing, we need to take the limits off of God, because he just doesn't heal by laying on of hands or, some miraculous way. Sometimes he heals by having people who are educated,
through people
who have, who know this stuff, who studied, and can help with these things. And that's healing too. You know what I mean? And I think we need to recognize that and realize that and say, that's not taboo to have a person who's educated, has a doctorate in this, and they can really help people in our church be healed. You know what I mean? I think that's something that we just have to put out there a little more.
Yeah. We just, we wouldn't do it with physical pain. You mentioned this at the beginning. If your leg is broken or if you're having heart issues, you're going to go see a doctor. You know what I mean? To get the help that you need. And it's It's the same. Yeah. It's the same situation. And even our care for people, if we find out that someone in the church is just, I don't know, like was in the hospital from something, or we'll bring them flowers, or maybe we'll help around, we'll ask them what they need. But when somebody is going through a mental health issue or a mental health crisis, we don't provide that same type of care. And so I think that we just need to start, like you said, I live in the balance, because I do believe in that. Like, I think that we need to stop seeing them as separate issues. I think we need to see them as one and the same, because it can be very physical, where sometimes literally it is out of their control. The depression, anxiety is at a point where it's out of their control, and it's not a matter of having more faith or having more prayer. They need physical recovery for those issues to help. A lot of times, if you go to a therapist and you find out they have bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever, what they do is they put them, on medication to stabilize those levels, at least enough to where they can break through to their thinking to start developing new patterns of thinking and ways to manage it. So medication can be helpful in that way. That's a whole other topic, but
and I think as leaders, we do this in we do our best as people who are following Christ to help people experience Jesus in a tangible way. And a lot of times that means there's a practical thing to it. It means we're going to make a gathering of people who come together, look and feel like this, because this is how we think people can experience God. It means we're going to be really intentional on community. We're going to set up missions. We put strategy at a very high priority, because without organization strategy, it's the only way you can mobilize a large number of people to see a big result. And so that we're okay with that when it comes to church world and how we organize and how we work together to do something bigger than just our individual selves. Yeah. We would never just, if somebody said, I need Jesus, go, well, let me pray for you. Boom, done. Okay, see ya. Like, you got it, you're good. But for some reason with health issues, we don't see it in those terms of these are people who are God-fearing men and women who are devoting their life to help people become better. Yeah. And Jesus is the greatest practitioner, we believe that, but in the same token, we should not diminish the gifting and the skill and the, all of that is in these people's work, their lifetime to help people. Just like we do it in the church, we're putting strategy and thought into how, and the intentionality can produce a great result. And so I think it's just that balance thing, we have to keep finding it.
I think it comes down to humility. Yeah. We have to be humble enough to recognize when we have run out of tools, or when we don't have the tools, and when we need more help. That, if anything, that's what I've seen a lot, where, like you were saying with the savior syndrome, where it's like, we have to be the ones to heal everything. We have to be the ones to feel it, to fix everything. We have to be the end of the means for this situation, but it's like, we need humility. We need humility to say, you know what? Maybe I don't know what's going on with this person. Maybe I don't have all the tools to help this person, or even the time to see them through their whole journey. Maybe I need to turn to something else. Maybe I need to turn to more resources. Maybe I need to find out more about this so that it can actually be helpful, so that they can actually find healing and recovery. So we need humility as a church with this issue.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I just wanted to say, I didn't want it to make it sound like, just a Pentecostal church. It's just, casting out demons, and that's all they think about. But I think, it comes back to humility. It's just like, it's all right that we don't have all the answers, you know what I mean? But let's find some people who can help us with those answers. Yeah, and let's keep working. Let's keep working with folks and not throw them away, but keep working.
That's good. And I think, we use terms to generalize stuff, and it helps in a conversation. But in reality, everything is different. There's just so many variances in this on a spectrum you can't lump, it's hard to define stuff and lump it into certain, this entire, it's hard. It's easy to say it, but it's harder it's not actually, how would I say it? We just have to be more careful in our nuances with it all, knowing that, like, as a person, we have to understand and use discernment and watch the Holy Spirit and what's healthy, what's good, what's right, what's noble, fix our eyes on that, and then the things that aren't, understand that we need to be there for support to help people find God in that scenario, but not outcast and push away. Anthony, would you mind praying us out?
Absolutely. Father, we thank you, God, for this conversation that we've had about mental health issues. Father, we've heard, Lord, from Brittney, Lord, that we just need to talk more about this, that we need to be aware, Lord, that these are real issues. People are dealing with real problems. There's real diagnosis for things that people are going through. And Lord, I just pray, Lord, that we are humble enough to say, Lord, that we don't have all of the answers and that we need help, and to seek out that help, and to, as a church, as a body of believers, as people who love other folks, that we reach out and say, we need help and come help us. And Lord, thank you for sending people to school and allowing them to have the heart, Lord, to see people through journeys, Lord, through mental health. And Father, I thank you for people like Brittney, Lord, who are out there, who understand faith, but who will also understand, God, mental health, God, and is being educated in it. And so, Father, I just pray, Lord, that the church will come to a place, Lord, where we see mental health, God, as a thing, Lord, that's not taboo to talk about, but a thing, Lord, that it can be healed, that can be delivered, set free from, Lord, because of what you've placed inside of people and what you've done for us. And Lord, so just bless us, Lord, and bless those pastors out there, Lord, that are dealing with, Lord, suicidal issues, that are dealing with things, Lord, that really, Lord, help, Lord, keep them, Lord, secluded, Lord. And I just pray, Lord, that they find their inner circle, that they find their Peter, James, and John, Lord, that they find those people, Lord, that they can pour out to. And Lord, just bless us, Lord. Bless the family, Lord, of Andrew, Father, and bless their community. Bless all the people, Lord, that are involved, Lord, and especially his wife and his boys. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Just as we're closing it up, I know you have a 7-day detox plan on YouVersion, right?
Yes.
How can we find that? Is it, you just look up 7-day detox?
Literally, if you go to your YouVersion Bible app and you type in anxiety or anxiety detox, it's going to be right there. And it's 7 days, and hopefully I'm hoping to come out with more mental health content on the Bible app. I was honored to connect with them and them say, we want more mental health content on our app, and we realize it's a struggle in the church. And so right now that's the one. And I've gotten a lot of great, helpful feedback.
That's awesome.
For it. So I hope it helps more people.
Yeah. I know we've talked on some pretty heavy stuff in this conversation. If you're struggling with any mental illness, write us, DM us. Our email is just hello@highervisionchurch.com, or if you're looking at this from any social media platform, Facebook or Instagram, you can DM us. If you're struggling with suicide, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 800-273-8255. And if you could take anything away from this, we just want to encourage you that somebody is there for you. We love you. People love you. You are meant for a purpose in this world. And, we've also talked a lot about Pastor Andrew at Inland Hills and his wife, 3 children that are left behind. And I'd like to put a link in the bio. There's support for her right now that we as a church, if there's anything that we do, it's take care of widows and orphans. And it's just so heartbreaking to even talk about this story. And it's been on my mind so much. But if you feel like you'd like to help support her and her family, there's a GoFundMe account set up, and we'll put links up to that as well. But Brittney, thank you so much for joining us.
This is great.
Yeah, we appreciate it. This was The Table. We'll see you guys next time.